Even though an insider report out of Echo-based Network says that Bob Iger actively pushed employees from celebrating their start dates at the Disney company, Bob Iger is now getting a 50-year service award from the Walt Disney Company. Let's talk about what's going on there here on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is 50-year service employee VashSky. Vash, thank you for your 300 years of service to That Park Place.
Wow, that's just, it feels like I just started yesterday, Jonas. It really does. It's an incredible accomplishment, and hopefully I can get up to your 500-year milestone.
Oh, well, thank you. It depends on when you count, when I was only executive chairman, or when I stepped down and only had a consultancy contract. All right, well, let's talk about this article out of Deadline. Bob Iger gets Snow White Service Award as he marks 50 years at Disney. Truly the ride of a lifetime. This by Nelly Andriva. The question, of course, comes to us of when will that ride stop? It's too bad it's not a Tiana's Bayou Adventure, because I think Bob Iger would already be off of it by now. Maybe the virtual queue would keep him from boarding altogether.
A little bit about that picture right there. That is at the Pirates of the Caribbean premiere at Disneyland. So that's where that was taken.
Aha! They're at 2006. This is for Dead Man's Chest. This is one of the first movies after Bob Iger became CEO of the company. I don't know how that was rushed, but I don't know if he would have been there for the entire time that this one was making. Pirates of the Caribbean, of course, started under Dick Cook, who was the head of the studio then, and then was replaced by Alan Horn, which Bob Iger does what he does best. He finds someone who is cast off by a more successful studio and brings them into the company. But right now, while everyone is struggling, he doesn't have that move to try and fix the company. But let's move on here. A Disney company tradition calls for longtime employees to be recognized with service awards on their major anniversaries. Popular collectible items. The awards come in the form of intricate and somewhat creepy. Oh, Deadline coming in with the spice. Bronze statuettes of famous Disney characters. The tradition travels all the way to the top, with CEO Bob Iger today sharing his 50-year service award, recognizing 50 magical years with the Walt Disney Company. He posted a photo of the personalized Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs statue on Instagram. Hey, look at that. They even got the spelling of dwarfs right, because it's dwarves everywhere else, but it's dwarfs at the Walt Disney Company, alongside a message reflecting on his half a century at Disney and predecessor Capital Cities/ABC. I started my career at ABC 50 years ago today, and the business has certainly changed a lot since then. Oh man, I'll say. Let's talk about what's changed here, Vash. What was it like for Bob Iger when he started at ABC?
Oh, as the humble weatherman that he was. Well, TV or linear networks were a lot more, I don't know, ubiquitous with the industry at that point. That I think this was before the real kind of takeoff of cable as well. So you got to factor that in. There were some big changes when cable was ushered in, that is for sure. But now we've moved into the streaming era, in which now we have a film, television, now making their way towards streaming. And obviously, I mean, that has really been the Achilles heel of Bob Iger there for sure, because he just can't figure out the streaming game. Maybe he can figure out the television game, and that was a ride of a lifetime there for sure. But now that ride is starting to peter out, and we're starting to get near maybe a break run. I don't know, but it's looking not good.
Yeah, I would say so. Obviously, Iger started in 1974 at ABC. He worked his way up. He went through sports. He did a lot of stuff with Olympic coverage. And if you read his book, he's very proud of his time as a sports executive over there, a producer. He did actual work there. I'm not trying to say he didn't. Some of his time at ABC is a little bit of a mixed bag. ABC, I don't think, has been on top very much in that time when he was running it himself there. But I think he thinks of himself as an ABC man more than he does a Disney man. And now, of course, we've gone from him being at ABC, Disney acquiring ABC, and they were always associated with ABC more than anyone else on the before that. Obviously, the Disneyland series started on ABC, and they got ABC to fund Disneyland, the actual building of the park. That was Walt's doing. Right there by doing these presentations here. So ABC and Disney were tied for a long time together there. 1990, they merge Capital Cities with Disney. Disney becomes the overriding entity. Capital Cities becomes ABC Inc. Later down the pike here, obviously, Bob Iger becomes CEO in 2005. There's a lot of Eisner in there that I'm glazing over here, but in the middle of all that, Bob Iger becomes a president at Disney instead of ABC. And now those things are not delineated exactly in the same way. Bob Iger gets them to buy Pixar for $7 billion, which was essentially a purchase of John Lasseter to get him to come be the chief creative officer of the company, spurring a second renaissance for the company, turning it into what we know it as today. Of course, there's also Star Wars, Marvel first, then Star Wars. And now he just buys things. Of course, now he's bought Fox, and now it's a giant behemoth corporation that it's hard to say exactly what it is, but it's not a company that makes family entertainment that is that successful, or at least not frequently successful. Vash, is that a fair way to say something nice about it here to balance me out?
Well, yeah. So I think there's some nice things to say about him. Obviously, he was very instrumental in getting Shanghai Disneyland established back when he was under Michael Eisner himself right there. And obviously ushered in that whole wave, which, I mean, I'm not saying has been unprofitable for the Walt Disney Company. It's just, well, you have to wonder how long that success is going to last. That's for sure. Also, too, as soon as he was made into CEO, buying Pixar was just an ace move right there. I don't think anybody could really argue with that. Getting the brain trust on board and kind of infusing that talent throughout the company and its ranks, which sorely needed it, by the way, was an awesome move. I mean, you really have to put that on him. Obviously, the Marvel acquisition was very good. It's where the later acquisitions, starting with Star Wars, that's really where it starts to go really downhill and really quickly,
right,
I must say.
Right. That's like the Icarus thing here. Obviously, Marvel, Star Wars, and all this. You wonder if Star Wars would have gotten more attention, maybe if maybe Bob Iger didn't have to spend so much time trying to integrate Fox into the company. It really doesn't make any sense when it comes down to it, because if the creative aspect was there, people would be watching what comes out of Disney. I get it that they want to have full control for streaming, but it sounds like the entire industry has realized that they didn't need to spend so much on streaming, and Disney hasn't been able to pivot away because they bought one of their competitors for $70 billion in order to try to compete solely in streaming. Let's talk about these. Other characters who headline Disney Service Awards include Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey at 10 years, Simba at 20, Tinkerbell at 25, Jiminy Cricket at 30, Pinocchio at 35 years. I noticed they don't point out the Mickey and Walt statue. That I don't know what year that people get that one, but you would think that would be the 50-year award. Maybe they don't do that one because they don't expect anyone to get to 50 years at the company.
Yeah, I have not seen really a nice little partner statue right there. That I would think would be quite the milestone for sure. I'm not really sure how they delineate between these characters. I really don't know, but I guess it is interesting, and yeah, I guess Bob Iger has been at the company for 50 years. That is probably 10 years too long, I would say.
I would say so. That's a good way of putting it. He's been there for so very long, and of course there were brief periods when he was not the CEO of the company. Of course, when Bob Chapek took over, Bob Iger went to the executive chairman position, and he viewed himself as the boss of the CEO. I don't think that worked out well. Obviously, there was also a very brief stint of 11 months where he was not executive chairman, and Bob Chapek was there on his own, and Susan Arnold was executive chairman of the company. Of course, also at that point, he still stayed on as a consultant to the company. Now, there is one thing that I want to bring to everyone's attention, and it flew under the radar. Sometimes when you release an hour-long video, people can lose a little bit of the detail that might be in there. So for that, we want to go over to our good friends over there at Echo Base Network, and they have been covering Star Wars for a very long time. It got to the point where maybe they were going to branch out and talk about things that were not Star Wars, and they've been doing really good work. There's a guy that did an interview with them, a former Lucasfilm employee that goes by the name of Knee Pain, that did a long interview with them. It was kind of unstructured, but I love that. I love a good conversation. Of course, that only raises the questions like, well, what would I ask in this instance here? They had someone who they're calling Agent Callus come on and do, I want to say, a 2-hour interview, but they said they cut it down to one. This one right here, time to tell all, corruption revealed. Ex-Disney employee speaks out about racism, hiring practices, and more at the Walt Disney Company. I can click on it, but I want you all to see the thumbnail here. Agent Callis that is there. He's somebody who worked for the Walt Disney Company for a very long time in a high but centralized position where he was interacting with several parts of the company. I don't want to get into too many details. I don't have any special knowledge on who Agent Callis is, but he does talk about he preceded Bob Iger becoming the CEO, and he worked with Eisner and Iger at different points in his career. And one of the things that used to be on cast member name badges was the date that you were hired at the company. And I think the Disney Files will bear some of this out if Alan gets back to finishing that series out over there on Film Threat. But there seems to be a sentiment that came in with Bob Iger that maybe a long time at the company was no longer an asset to the Bob Iger Corporation, for lack of a better term, to delineate between the Walt Disney Company and the current form of the Walt Disney Company. Go ahead.
You really got to think too. Right around the time that Bob Iger is actually acquired within the company, in the 1970s or so, that's a much different Walt Disney Company. And it's something that I think Michael Eisner was looking to kind of get away from in some aspects, right? So it's like, we need a new mentality in here. We can't just have a dead guy run our company, because a lot of people would go, what would Walt do in this situation? And it really was killing the company. I mean, there's no question about that. And so they were, I think Michael Eisner at that time, along with a lot of his compatriots, were attempting to change the culture in a big, big way. And I think that was taken to its extreme with Bob Iger. We have heard internally that, Disney's not really the place you end up. It's the place you kind of use as a stepping stone to get to some other places, particularly, corner offices at more established companies, or more companies with a better prestige, at least when it comes to your portfolio. And so you really got to think, Jonas, if the emphasis isn't being placed on, length of stay or how long you've been working with the company or seniority, and you're just looking to be there just to kind of get something on your resume and then go, what kind of decisions would you make in order to, get as much as you could from the company? Do you do short-term maneuvers in order to make the quarters look good, and then you're out by the time the consequences for those actions come around, you're not even there? Or do you make really outstanding long-term decisions?
Well, that's a very good point. That's a really good point, because right now the Walt Disney Company is very focused on headline chasing, things to move the stock price. In fact, earlier this year, when in the fight with Nelson Peltz, Bob Iger announced 4 or 5 different initiatives that were patently, specifically unveiled to move the stock price, like a $1.5 billion investment in Fortnite, when I'm pretty sure that Epic Games, in Epic, which owns Fortnite, and I'm pretty sure Epic Games would have probably agreed to do all of those things without having to pay $1.5 billion of shareholder money in order to invest into Epic Games. Or the Taylor Swift concert, which cost them $75 million so they could say, we got this on Disney Plus. I think the movement in the stock price paid for that, rather than the actual effect of doing good business by getting people to subscribe to Disney Plus. Or the announcement of this ESPN JV, which was at the term sheet phase, or the announcement of ESPN Direct to Consumer, which I think that's the 7th or 8th version of ESPN that we've heard of in the last little while. It seems like a lot of the movements here are specifically to move the stock price, rather than to increase the quality of offerings of the Walt Disney Company and do business long term. So I think you have a very good point there. The thing that I want to bring up that Agent Callis brings up is, and he puts this on Bob Iger, is it used to say on the name badges how long you've been at the company. And he feels like it was a Bob Iger initiative, because once he got into power, that went away very quickly. And so seniority at the company was no longer something that was viewed as a positive. Of course, Bob Iger is happy to get his 50-year service award, I suppose. They probably should go ahead and give him the Disney Legend Award right now. But I wonder if he is technically there, so he has technically been there. So I don't want to count his time as an executive chairman against him, or his time as just a consultant against him. But I do know that when people, quote unquote, leave the company, you have to be there for at least 5 years before they will say, oh, yes, you do qualify for this, and here's your seniority date and all that. So some of the lower level cast members are not lower level, lower than 50-year cast members are pointing out that, of course, Bob Iger gets his, of course, because he's the CEO, and he's the once and future CEO of the Walt Disney Company here. I just don't think that Bob Iger actually likes the Walt Disney Company. I think he likes the company that he works for now. I just don't think he likes the Walt Disney Company very much. Vash, do you have anything to say before we wrap this up?
He definitely doesn't like the Walt Disney Company, but he has much fondness for the Disney Company, right? And that's a very crucial distinction there. And we say it sometimes, the Bob Iger Corporation or company, and I think that's very, very true. As unfortunate as that may seem. Look, he's going to get a Legends Award. Everybody does. They just hand those out like candy. As long as he doesn't get a window on Main Street, I'm good.
Oh, he's going to get one, though. In fact, when he came in, the first thing that they did was take down Bob Chapek's name off of one of those. It wasn't Main Street. I think it was one of the cruise lines, the master shipbuilder
or something.
Bob Chapek. And I don't usually like to play clip. I like to save them for live streams, but I think of this clip from The Founder where it's Ray Kroc talking about McDonald's.
It's the name, that glorious name. It sounds like America. I knew right then and there I had to have it, and now I do.
Well, that being said, we want to throw this to our commenters. Would you like a 50-year service award at the Bob Iger Corporation? Can you just imagine them putting him in bronze and putting him in the park? That being said, like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Plays for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.